Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and I'm even more happy to see that we have a full hall. And you know how speakers always say, I know I'm the thing that's keeping you from your lunch. I'm not going to say that, but I'm going to say something different about lunch. If you go out after this talk and you start talking to people, I want you to think who would be the person you naturally gravitate towards. It will probably be someone you like, someone who made an impression, or someone that fits your natural style. So it will be someone whose personality fits you and makes an impression. And this is the same thing that brands need to do in order to attract customers. And that's the same thing that us content writers need to do in order to attract readers. And this is why I think brand voice is so important, because it's a way to imbue that content, which is already high quality and informative and interesting, with that certain je ne sais quoi, as they say, that element that's going to make an impression. This is actually what I do for a living. I'm a digital marketer, as Lena said, and I'm responsible for helping brands create a relationship with their customers. And that relationship starts with making an impression, obviously. By the way, if you want to connect, you see all the social media handles under there. I'm the same on Twitter as Instagram, so if you're making photos, please tag me. This is very, very important. Very important. And the other thing that I want to say now, because I see a lot of phones stuck high, thanks greatly for that, I guess it's for Instagram, is that you get all the slides in the end. I'll show you a link where you can download the slides and some additional handouts that will help you go through the process that I'm about to explain on how you can create your brand voice and how you can actually make everyone in the team stick to it. Because whenever a few different people start creating content for the same brand or organization or website, it usually shows that it's a few different people, and it shouldn't. It should be your brand voice. And the thing I want to start with is, like, why do we need to focus on that? And I'm going to talk about juice and orange juice, since in Greece that's a very popular thing in general, but the example is from the US. You see, I chose a couple of social media posts to illustrate what brand voice really is. We see on the left a post by Tropicana, very popular brand, huge brand. And what they do is they're talking about, like, the qualities of their juice. Vitamin C, whatever. On the other hand, you have innocent drinks. And for the people in the back, the post says, we've made a new drink, it's blue. It's tasty, it's blue. It's good for you, it's blue. It's made from apple, lime, guava, and coconut water, it's blue. It's boosted with vitamins, it's blue. It's the perfect subject for a Venn diagram. And did we mention it's blue? And out of those two, I have a clear favorite. And the reason for that is not that one brand is being funny or curious. It's the fact that if you see the post on the left somewhere and you remove the logo, you'll never know what's the brand. If you see the post on the right, even if you remove the drink itself, even if you remove the social tag, you'll always know it's innocent drinks. And that's the essence of brand voice. It's essentially a matter of removing the tag and this content still feeling like it's something that comes from you, from your own company, from your own brand, from your own website. And there are a bunch of different reasons why this is important and why that works. The first is that you'll be able to stand out from competitors. A bunch of people have heard about innocent drinks, even if it's not a brand that's available in that country. We don't have it in Bulgaria. I've been following their Twitter account for ages because they're just so damn cool. And whenever they finally arrive, guess what I'll be drinking? The second benefit you get out of creating a standout-outish brand voice is that you're humanizing the brand. You're showing that there's someone behind it. And especially for a digital product, or let's say a web agency which is trying to attract clients, it's very difficult to stand out and to show that there's actual humans involved in that whole thing. And this is important. This is why people care. This is why people choose to work with someone or to buy from someone instead of someone else. It's a question of trust. It's a way to build that trust by becoming more familiar to people. When you're seeing content that stands out, you remember it better. And when you remember it, the next time you see that brand, you're immediately more inclined to trust it. And obviously, you're creating content that people like, and in that sense, you'll be liked as well. So this is why I like talking about brand voice, and this is why I think you should care too. But one thing that wasn't shown on that slide was that you have to be silly or funny to succeed. And that's not the case. So I'm going to give you a different example. 404 pages, the bane of our existence. And there's a bunch of different ways to tackle that. The only way that's not good at all is this. 404 not found. You don't give the person any information, and you're not showing them any personality. It's an incredibly frustrating situation for a customer to reach a page like that. So let's try to make it better. So one example here is ActiveCampaign, which is an email provider, an email marketing platform and automation software that's geared more towards enterprise clients, bigger companies that have complex user flows that they want to automate. So they're saying something that's very classic, if you will, that's more conservative than other brands, but it still shows that it's them. You see the treatment of their logo on the side. You see that the text is still interesting to go through. It's not something you would see on a different page. On the other hand, obviously, you have stuff like MailChimp, who are geared towards small businesses, small business owners, and freelancers, and they get to be more funky and more fun and different. This doesn't say that one of those approaches is bad. It's a question of creating that brand voice in a way that resonates with the target audience you're trying to get to. So make sure that you're sticking to that. Don't be cheeky or extra fun just for the sake of it. You need to resonate with the target audience, because there are shy people who are going to be outside at these lunch tables, and they're going to congregate with people who are more put down, more subdued. There are people who are big personalities and huge extroverts that are going to attract similar people. It's a question of creating that personality that attracts the people you want to create, not necessarily being one way or a different way. So how do we get there? The first point is doing your research. There are a bunch of ways in which you can actually create that brand voice in a way that's consistent with what you've already been doing and the way you've already been creating content and writing and so on and so forth. But it requires a bit of soul searching. So there's a bunch of different ways in which you can start, and the goal here is to gather as much information possible and try to not veer off completely from what you've been doing so far, because that's going to be hurtful to some people, but to align what you already have with where you want to go, which is going to be what I'll be talking about in a sec. So when it comes to research, what are the different sources we can get? First, let's look inside our team, inside the stuff that we're already doing. Starting with mission and values. That's a bit of a cheesy thing marketing people like to say, but you for sure believe in something as a team, and your brand style and your brand voice should reflect that as well. It doesn't need to be like very huge level of like we're gonna change the world sort of thing. It can be something small, but something you passionately believe in. I told you at the start what's my mission. My mission is to help brands create relationships. And that's why I try to be open and friendly and share what I know with a lot of people, because that's the basis of relationship building for me. If I have different values, I would probably approach creating content for my blog in a different way. I don't know. I'm only me and I can not be anyone else. The second thing you can look at is what you've already been creating. So what's that content that you've been looking at and you've been staring in the face day after day on your social media accounts, in your website, in the emails you're sending customer, even in the micro copy in the product that you're building. Probably there are some clues that you can find in there that are already gonna tell you, oh, actually, I've never thought about it, but I guess our style is a bit more laid back, and what we're trying to do is get people to chill and not take things too seriously. Or maybe it's a different thing. It will be different for everyone. But getting that information out of the accounts you already have and looking at them through a different lens is going to help you with that. And the third internal source of information you can use that I really like is just what's the style of communication in your team already? I mean, not what you're showing to the world, but what you're doing on your own internally. How do you communicate? What's your Slack like? What are your emails like? It will be very hard for a team that's playful and chill to create an external image that's very conservative and stiff and professional. You need to own who you are because, as Oscar Wilde says, everyone else is taken, and you need to do what you can, and you need to benefit from who you already are. So looking at that information, it's gonna give you some additional clues, and it's gonna help you align your content creation with who you already are. Then we need to look on the outside. First off, what are the audiences we're trying to attract? And this isn't necessarily a case of being completely different and putting a mask on, but say I call my grandma in a minute and tell her about how this presentation went. I hope I can tell her it went swimmingly, but we'll see. I still have some time to go. I'm gonna talk to her in a different way than if I call my best friend. It's just a matter of who your audience is and how you can adapt that style to the liking of that audience. If I call my grandma and say I crushed it, she'll probably get very worried. I don't know. Then the next thing is looking at your competitors. You obviously want to still be yourself, but you don't want to be too close to someone who's already out there on the market and talking to your people. So you need to get that healthy dose of differentiation in order to get where you want to go. And that's why we first want to look at what are our competitors doing and how they're communicating. You can do it better than a competitor who's occupying the same niche, but that takes a lot of time. So my suggestion would be try to have your own unique twist than what others are doing in order to get ahead quicker. Then the next thing would be, what are the channels where you're creating content? Obviously, if we're talking about a website or an email series, it will be easier for you to do whatever you like. But then if we're talking about social media, communication on LinkedIn is going to be different from the content you put out on Twitter and on Instagram, hopefully. That means you're doing it right. It's because people in different channels, they expect you to say different things and to comport yourself in a different manner. And finally, if you're already looking at an international audience, you need to know how to communicate. You know, there's this very popular diagram that I've seen where it says, like, to people in the US, anything less than awesome means it's actually very, very bad. And to people here on the Balkans, or at least in Bulgaria that I know, like, we usually go up to a point where so-so means you did it great. You know, it's just a different style of communicating, and you need to be aware of that. So even if, like, you want to look at a completely different market, like going from Europe to Asia or South America, You need someone who's been on the ground and who knows what local people mean by certain phrases and terms. So we've done our research. What's the next thing? It's going to be gathering the team, showing them what we already have, and getting them to do some additional work with us. And that, frankly, is my favorite part of the whole process of creating a brand voice. Putting the team together, huddling up and saying, okay, who do we want to be? What do we want to present to the world in our content? The first exercise that I really love in doing that is called personality sliders. It was developed by GV, so Google's Google Ventures, known in the past. And what they tell you is you have these 5 scales, from elite to mass appeal, from serious to playful, from conventional to a rebel, from a friend to being in a position of authority, and from mature and classic to young and innovative. You can put different brands on the sides of these, brands that resonate with you and make sense. I've actually changed that a bit from their original format. But what you end up doing is put down the markers of where you currently are and where you want to be. Ideally, you're also going to look at your top 3 competitors and where they fit on each of these scales, so you know that you're a bit different than the others. The way this usually goes is I'll give out people sticky notes, or we can do it virtually on like a Miro board or something like that. And we're going to start putting up notes. What's going to happen is that at one point you'll see that people's marks are going to converge at similar points in the scale. And that's where you currently are or where you want to be. Knowing where you want to go means you're going to start creating some changes when you're creating your content on a regular basis, but we'll get to that in a sec. There's a more extended version of that same exercise, which is done by the Nielsen Norman Group. They're a big UX research company, and they have their own format for doing this. They only have 4 scales: formal to casual, serious to funny, respectful to irreverent, and matter of fact to enthusiastic. And they've simplified it so you can choose just one of the 3 positions on each scale. And they've extended that with some additional words you can add to that. So let's say if I say on the first row from between formal and casual, I'm going to be in the middle. But what this means is that I want to still present like a trustworthy personality, but I still want to be friendly. So you can get those to add some additional context. And what we're going to do in the end, once that I go through that, is use the information from those exercises to create our own brand voice map and to get that into our day-to-day work. This is what my tone of voice dimensions look like. So if you check out my website, I hope you see that I'm trying to stick close enough to each of those points when I'm creating my own content. And I mean, like, you guys will be the judges if I'm doing a good job at it or not. I mean, it's not to me to say. And then the final of these top 3 exercises, and you'll find more in the handouts that I'll show you where you can download at the end, is the exercise of creating your brand archetype. These archetypes were actually created by Carl Jung, but they apply to brands as well. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail through them because they're a bit more complex, but in general, they're split between 4 separate categories. So brands that are motivated by freedom, so they want to be very open, they want to explore the world, they want to reach every boundary and surmount that boundary. And you already see in each of those, well, probably not see as well as possible, but that's why you'll get the slides in the end. You already see that brands like, let's say, Red Bull are strictly in the category of an explorer, so they want to go all over the place and they want to go where no one's gone before. For example, like in the stratosphere. The second category is ego-motivated brands, and we've gone to think about ego as like a bad thing for people, but it doesn't need to be. It means you want to leave your mark on the world. You want to make sure that you're changing the world as you go along. And this can be done in a bunch of different ways, either through changing the status quo completely and leaving that, which is like what Tesla would like to do, for example, or it can be a way of using your creative power to change the world, which is what Apple is, or at least was trying to do in the past as well. Then we have social motivated brands. So these are the brands that are trying to create connection and that are trying to really work with others. And then finally, we have order motivated brands. So these are, again, the type of brands who are going to communicate with others a lot, but it's more in the sense of, I'm going to show you the right way. I'm going to be very prescriptive about where you need to go and what you need to do. And this is for your best self-interest. You're probably going to see, if you're doing that exercise and reading about these brand archetypes, that you probably fit in 2 or 3 different categories. So what I usually suggest is choosing one primary archetype and then adding the qualities of a few secondary, maybe 2, max 3 other archetypes to say like, okay, like we're mainly a magician, but we're taking the care for others from the caregiver, and we're also gonna show people that we're trying to be just like them, so taking part of the everyman, the type of brand that IKEA is, for example. But all of this probably sounds a bit like esoteric and even a bit like super theoretical. So I want to leave you with the last step, which is, I think, the most important one. And it's, okay, Vasi, we've gone through all of this, we've done our research, we've gathered the team, we put up like the coffee and snacks, we went through the exercises, we had so much fun, but how does that actually apply? Like, how do you get all of those adjectives that you've been sticking to the wall, how do you get that to exist in your day-to-day content creation? And as Milana was saying, you need documentation for it. You need to codify that and you need to put it into action. The simplest format that I found that I really, really like is creating something like that. This is called a brand voice chart, and it essentially says, here are our top characteristics, here's what they mean, so that we're all on the same page, and giving a few examples of each to show people what this really means when you're actually doing your day-to-day content. This is a very simple format and one that you can like stick on the side of your desk or on the wall next to it, or you can send it out to freelancers who are going to create content for the same company, for the same client. And you're making sure that people are going to look at it and they're going to try to stick to it in their best efforts. If you want to go in more detail, there's always like the option of creating a more detailed brand style guide. MailChimp have a very good style guide. So if you just search for MailChimp content style guide, it's gonna pop up like in Google as a first result. But there are a lot of different formats that you can use for this. This is a bit more complex and it doesn't talk only about brand style. It's good as an initial resource when you're onboarding a new person on the team who will be creating content for your website or for your social media accounts. But it's not something you'll be using on a day-to-day basis. So for day-to-day work, this is like very, very useful. And then the final thing you need to think about is, okay, we have those brand characteristics, but we're not going to show everything to everyone every single time. And we need to think how these characteristics change depending on the different context. On social media, you can be very fun, but will you try to joke about with a client who's reaching out to customer support? Probably not. You need to tone that characteristic down and put another one higher up, like maybe friendliness, or being there for people and making sure that their issue is solved. So going through all of these potential scenarios and saying, okay, let's for now make sure that customer support doesn't work with the more the fun and more the engaging stuff we're doing on social, and they stick to something that's more tame, might be a good solution. And the last thing that I like to do, at least at the start, is to appoint someone on the team who's going to be your chief brand voice officer. This is going to be the person who's going to look at your content on a daily basis and reach out to people on the team and say, hey, we agreed on these specific characteristics that we want to present to people. I think here we can change the tone a bit to fit what we've already agreed on. So as you go along, there'll be one person who's making sure that you're sticking to what you've already discussed and what you agreed on. And they're gonna be like the gatekeeper, and they're gonna tell people if they're veering off too far away from your brand voice. This is something that you need at the start for sure. It's something that you can phase off in a few months if you already see that there's not so much work that this guy will be doing. So yeah, that's about it. So how about that lunch and talking to people who you resonate with? As promised, of course, first off, thanks for all your attention up till now. And you can download the slides. You'll find here both an exercise template and the slides from the presentation. So if anything stuck, of course, feel free to talk to me first. That's why I'm here today. And then you can find more content on the site. Thank you.
Any questions? No, it's it. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm a designer, and before I design something, I always try to find the voice of the brand. But I feel that whenever I'm asking people, I kind of guide them, and I don't want to do that. Could you help me with some, I don't know, questions when you can find the brand voice, but without being so...
so leading.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that one of the things that I might try to do would be to ask people to give me examples of brands they want to be like, or at least they find similar characteristics that they want to imbue. So in that sense, you're not telling them like, would you be like an IKEA or a Red Bull? You're telling them, give me your examples and tell me why you like this. And then based on this information, then you can already lead them on a bit. You can, like, when they explain to you what this means to them and why they're choosing these brands instead of some other brand on the market, you can say, okay, like, if I'm understanding you correctly, this and this is what you mean. And then they'll be more inclined to actually engage in the discussion and either correct you or say, yeah, that's exactly it. Cool.
I have a question. Thank you. I suppose I might not need it. Με ακούτε καλά? Are you listening me well? Okay, then I won't need it. So, I'm a salesman in my company, apart from that I came here for the first aid. And from my experience, I have seen that you have shown the schedule that you find playful and or serious. What I have seen is that the playful or the more casual, at 9 times out of 10, you can't go there from on the spot. Because if you go with more casual on the neighborhood store to sell them, they will find you, if you are serious, aloof. Mm-hmm. Or as we call it here in Greece, with the nose on the heavens. Or if you go to the company, and you are not serious, then they will say, this secondary or irrelevant guy. So my question is, this schedule, for as far as I see it, you have to be 9 times out of 10 serious. So is it how can you find the balance, or there's depending on the situation?
Yeah, I think both of the examples you gave, they fit pretty much with what we were discussing earlier about like how do you make your brand voice fit different scenarios. I actually tried to simplify things here because we have only 30 minutes, but there's like sort of a differentiation between brand voice, which is your personality, and tone, which is like how do you fit that personality in a different scenario. And this is exactly what I showed in that last bit. So with sales, it's similar to what customer support would be. You need to be more professional. You need to show them that we'll be there for you and we're gonna do the job. But in other communication, you can express more open, more playful characteristic or quality. Say when you're building your website and you're presenting your team on the site, maybe this can be a bit different. And obviously, yeah, and if you're already familiar with the person, yeah, and obviously that's also gonna fit the audience you're trying to reach. I'm not gonna stand here on stage, you know, in like, I don't know, clown shoes and present a topic like that because I know my audience. I know that you guys expect me to still be serious enough to build that confidence and build that trust and for you to listen to me and to pay attention. But if I'm in a different situation, say at the after party and we're having a drink and we're talking, then I can be already having built that initial bit of the relationship, then I can let myself go a bit more and talk to you in a more informal and friendly way. So that's sort of the difference there. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. And thank you for the time.
Thank you too.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering, would you recommend for a growing brand, a new brand, let's say an educational online school, to go a bit bold with the management's personality? For example, if they are a bit funny or playful, what's the limit? Like, how much of the personality?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's $1 million question, isn't it? Like, how do you make that? How do you find that sweet spot that's gonna be you and feel different and yeah, and at the same time fit with the audience? I think with that example on online school, like it's a perfect example that you're often trying to service a few different audiences at the same time because you need to do it interesting and engaging enough for the students, but you need to show professionalism and trust for their parents. So you have to, you know, teeter on that seesaw a bit whenever you're talking to a different audience to exude a different quality. So that's a great example where in different channels, you'll probably be talking in a different way. So for example, in a brochure that's presenting the platform to parents or on a landing page, because we're obviously like talking about online content mostly, you try to tame down that fun element a bit. But when you're getting a student, let's say in the platform and you're bringing them through different educational challenges, you're going to be more playful. So this is where I feel like the split would be for you guys.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
From your experience, how do you believe that a designed brand voice is the thing that you are following and have, you know, along the way with you all the time, or is something that you're gonna change many times as you are more aware of your clients, your target groups, and if you need to change, do you have any indicators of when's the time to change?
Yeah, great question. I think for sure you're gonna evolve and you're gonna change a bit. That's the same as like we humans do. Like you don't stay at with the same type of personality all throughout your life. So it's silly to expect a brand to. I would say one main indicator of changing that would be if you're launching a new product or you're trying to reach a different target audience. You definitely need to reevaluate your style then. because that means you'll be attracting a lot of different people who don't necessarily know you, and you need to make sure that that first impression you create is going to fit that new audience. For all other situations, I usually do either every 6 months for brands that are younger and that are more dynamic, or every year for brands that are more established. We're gonna do almost like a full audit. So we're gonna review the assumptions we have on our target audiences. We're gonna assess if we need to phase out some channels where we're creating content or adding new ones. We will reevaluate if the topics we're covering actually fit. And one of the things that we're also going to reevaluate is going to be the brand voice that we have. Does that still fit? If we see that there's a change in the personas we're trying to work with, then we're probably going to change the brand voice a bit, or at least adapt it. This isn't going to be like a major overhaul. Usually it's just like, you know, a step to the left or to the right. So this is the way we're going to go most of the times.